Okay. And I will turn it over to Landis, Rick, and Lisa to share information about Bendable, Maine. Thank you guys for joining us today.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Do you want me to start? Do a brief introduction?
Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Okay. So I'm Lisa Shaw. I'm with the Library Development Division of the Maine State Library. I have been for almost 7 years now. And in my prior life before libraries, way back when, I was with the Department of Labor. So when I took this position with Maine State Library, the workforce development aspect came along with me, and I was able to join up with this group, which is where I first heard about Bendable. And it was an initiative that our state library was very interested in, and our Department of Labor was also pretty interested in. This was in the before times, just before COVID. So when we were starting to, discuss what kind of a partnership we could do, because we knew that our public libraries, I was a public library director prior to this and an assistant director at another public library prior to that. We knew we were seeing the same people that I would have seen when I was in the career centers. We're sharing the same customer base, if you will, the same patronage. And a lot of times people were coming into the public libraries looking for workforce development type services if they couldn't get to a career center. Maine used to have, I think, 28 career centers throughout the state, and that footprint has been greatly reduced over the years. I don't even know if there are 10 dedicated career centers left around the state anymore, but we do have 255 or so public libraries scattered throughout the state with very robust fiber connectivity, symmetrical broadband connectivity through our main school and library network. So while COVID kind of threw a wrench in the works of our developing partnership with the Department of Labor, ARPA funding kind of helped open a new door to that. And we were able to kind of get together with my prior boss, who is our current labor commissioner. She was the labor commissioner when I worked for the Department of Labor years ago. So it was nice to see Laura Fortman kind of circle back around and be able to work underneath her again. And we had some discussions that started between the state library and Department of Labor. And that's when Rick entered the scene. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to him.
Great. Actually, Lisa, what I might do is have Landis introduce himself and then come back to me, and then I'll kind of present Bendable as a whole, and then we'll start. Yeah, going through some stuff. Landis, you want to say hey, and then I'll kind of jump in.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm Landis Hackett. I'm one of 3 Bendable Maine fellows. A job title my mom as a yoga teacher finds to be hilarious. And yeah, so I was brought onto the team in the year, or I guess 8 or so, 9 months in leading up to the launch of Bendable Maine. We were kind of brought in to be the boots on the ground in Maine, forming collaborative partnerships with organizations, government entities, for-profits, nonprofits, to kind of ensure that the platform was being built by Mainers for Mainers, which is something we still hold true today as we continue to develop the platform. Yeah, so it's been a pleasure to learn about. This is my first time working with libraries, and it's been a pleasure to learn about how awesome libraries are and how increasingly they're becoming, as all of you know, the first line of workforce development in a lot of communities. And in Maine, especially in rural areas, the last line of broadband access for folks. So Bendable kind of sits right at that nexus, and we're going to be looking at how we've been increasing collaborations between workforce stuff that has already been going on in the state and this flexible platform, hence its name, Bendable. Yeah, Rick.
Great. Thanks, Anderson, Lisa. So I'm Rick Wartzman. I'm the co-founder of a new company called Bendable Labs. We actually just spun out in January from the Drucker Institute, where Bendable was created. My colleagues and I there, working at Claremont Graduate University. We were an institute based on campus, a social enterprise, and had created this lifelong learning and workforce development platform. Development of which really began back in 2018. It was launched in South Bend, Indiana, in the summer of 2020. Great timing, right? Right into the pandemic. We did not foresee, and we had grand plans to. I remember we were going to unveil this at a big citywide festival, like week-long festival called Best Week Ever, which turned out to be one of the worst weeks ever as the pandemic descended upon us. And we quickly pivoted from, doing a lot of live things to being, totally virtual and online. So anyway, even though this is online, it's been great to see the work that Landis and the fellows and Lisa and her Maine State Library colleagues have been able to do as we really integrate the digital and the physical with Bendable Maine, and we'll be talking about how that works. They'll really be talking about that. But what I thought I would do is begin with a little bit of just an introduction to what Bendable is as a platform, kind of give you a quick tour of that, and then that'll, I think, pivot nicely into then how Bendable is being leveraged in terms of workforce. And then after Landis and Lisa take you through that and how that's being done in Maine, we'll pivot back, and I'll conclude with a little bit on a project that my company, Bendable Labs, that we're doing in North San Diego County, which is very explicitly around connecting libraries and workforce through something called the Job Readiness Room. And I'll tell you a little bit about that as well. So without further ado, let me show you Bendable. Some of you may be familiar with the platform. Some of you, this may be your first kind of introduction. So I'm actually showing you, we're in various library systems across the country. We actually have a sales channel partnership with Baker and Taylor. So they're really kind of our sales arm. And they are selling Bendable to libraries across the country and beginning to get more and more traction with library systems. My Bendable Labs colleagues and I spent quite a bit of time, training up their sales team and customer success team so that they can do that work. So we don't sell it directly, but we sell through B&T. What I'm showing you is Bendable South Bend, and you can see everywhere we are currently, and we have a couple new library systems that have signed on that we'll be adding in the next few months. But if you go to bendable.com and hit find your library, you'll see we're in a whole bunch of California libraries because of some funding and some excitement from the California State Library. And then we're in South Bend, where we started, the St. Joseph County Public Library there in Indiana. And then, of course, we're touching all the libraries in Maine through the Maine State Library. So Bendable South Bend, all the instances look more or less the same, but some have different features. And then Maine is the most robust one in terms of this was our place to actually, because of our strong partnership with the state library, put what we're calling Bendable fellows on the ground, as Landis said, to really do that work of integrating what could be just another digital platform, but really integrating it, bringing it to life, kind of integrating into the programming and activities of employers, nonprofits, government agencies, schools, and so on. And so that's the work of the fellows, which we'll share again in a few minutes. So in terms of the platform itself, you're looking at the Bendable homepage in South Bend. And what Bendable is at sort of the most fundamental level, foundational level, is we're a learning access and discovery and access layer for library patrons. And so what we're trying to do is take the learning resources that many of you will have, whether it's LinkedIn Learning or Coursera or Learning Express or some combination of those things, and get them all in one place so that patrons can have a better experience finding the learning that they need, whether it's low stakes learning, I need to help my kid with algebra homework that night, or higher stakes, I need to upskill for a new job. It's all there on the platform. We can integrate local resources. If you have a partnership with the community college, we're doing that in the case of the Oakland Public Library, or with other learning institutions. South Bend is a really, because it's been around the longest, the local, Parks Department and the YMCA and the local music school, and their kind of course catalogs are all integrated into the Bendable platform. So this becomes a learning marketplace, a one-stop shop for learning for your community. And it takes, for those library resources, the LinkedIn Learnings and the Learning Express and so on, which can be underutilized, because, in many cases they sit kind of buried in databases somewhere, and they're a bit, friction filled for your patrons to get to. We try and clean a lot of that up and make it easier to find. So the homepage organizes learning resources, through different popular, topics, whatever it is. Here's job readiness. And so you can start to see the different courses that come up in South Bend. Here's a bunch of stuff, right, from LinkedIn Learning, but you'll also see, here's an event, from the public library itself. Here's something from the local chamber, which has its catalog in. Here's from Penn Foster, another learning provider that the library buys course seats from. GCF Global, which is a goodwill platform that actually comes with the Bendable platform. It's already integrated in, and so on. So again, you can just sort of check out what's most popular. This is a great way for librarians to organize and curate content. So, think of it as digital end caps for learning, much like you would do a book display, right? So it's Women's History Month. So here's a spotlight on women's history, and you can see different courses that are and learning opportunities that are made available. Here's another spotlight. These were all put together by librarians at the St. Joseph County Public Library. So there's an admin hub on the back end of this, and they can kind of preload the courses they want around different topics. So becoming a writer, course from edX, a course from LinkedIn Learning, a local course from Indiana University South Bend, study.com, and so on. So you can just see it's a great way to organize learning content and make it kind of fun and discoverable for your patrons. There's a bunch in the Bendable catalog. There can be, again, depending on which providers you have, that can be in Spanish. So here's a bunch of learning in Spanish resources. And this looks like, well, what is this? Oh, helping your child learn. So these are different, geared for younger learners, a whole variety of courses, from financial literacy to coding to internet safety. So again, just a great way to organize content. We have different containers for learning resources. So community collections, which we have a process where the library sort of nominates folks and finds the authors of these collections. These are local patrons, local residents who have expertise on a particular topic, and then work with the library to make their own individual learning playlist. And so it could be somebody who has vocational experience and depth of knowledge, or just avocational passion. So here's actually somebody from the local work board in South Bend, Work One, who put together a collection on how to find a new job when you're out of work. And these are a variety of resources that, as an expert, right, that in this case, Tom is recommending. And then you get through his recommendations as an individual learning playlist, and you hit the want more section. And these are kind of official content providers. So stuff from GCF Global or Goodwill or Penn Foster on the same topic. So again, just a neat way to kind of organize content. And you can see the variety, and there are dozens of these collections in South Bend, there are dozens in Maine. And again, our team at Bendable Labs helps do the final edit and polish, but these are really put together by the library. They range in topic greatly. This is a neat pairing kind of thing that we have, where local library events, this is called Staff Picks and More Clicks. They can pair what's coming up at the library with a related course. which is really neat. So, yeah, so, right, here's the class on, on books and meeting local authors, and here's how to write a best-selling novel in only steps. So there you go, from LinkedIn Learning. Anyway, so that gives you a little bit of a feel of Bendable, robust, discover page. I mean, you can do everything from, from search, and resources will begin to populate the page. There are 285 that touch on technology, again, from a whole variety of different learning providers. And you can just sort of scroll through and find out what works for you. If you do, like, here's a class. Let me log in, show you what this looks like. There we go. Let's try that again. So if I, so here's a Mac Basics class. It's 1 hour. This is from the National Digital Equity Center, one of our learning partners. And each one of these, you see when I clicked on this resource card, we call it, which tells you about the learning. Here's a summary again of the class, and it gives you key details. It's an hour. It's one long session, right? It's live instruction, actually, in the case of the National Digital Equity Center. It's online. Here's what to expect. You're going to have to, sign up or whatever it asks you to do. And then you continue on and you're ready to, you're ready to go and take the next class. This one's live, so these are actually more scheduled out. Some you're obviously connecting in and you're going right to, right to the learning experience. So it varies a bit by provider, and I'll show you what that looks like. I just got to find the right, a different provider. There's a lot of NDEC in here. Let's do a, here, so you can see BrainFuse and LinkedIn Learning. There's a little bit of a process for LinkedIn Learning, for example, or BrainFuse, because the library has bought seats. You would go, and on this first time, I'd have to sign up for using my library card, just as you would. We're trying to get single sign-on worked out with all of these different providers, but it is not very easy. This is a bit of a different experience, but I'll just show you what this looks like. So here's a technology in the workplace class. This is 10 hours. It leads to industry certification. Here it's telling me when I leave. And again, so all the learning, we're the content curator, not the content creator. You're going to leave Bendable. You're going to go to the partner site. And when I do that, in this case, I've been told in what to expect. I'm going to have to enroll. And this is the one-time enrollment, but I'm right in their part of the catalog. I hit enroll and I would fill out whatever, and then I would go right to that class. So again, some places there's that little bit of friction, which we're trying to get out of the process. I'm looking for like a GCF or something. Yeah. So here's a getting started with Zoom. This one, there's no friction. It's a little 15-minute lesson. And I would actually go right to the site and get started with the class. So that is a super quick whirlwind tour of the Bendable platform, just as a discovery layer. But I think what's really exciting is when libraries themselves, or in this case, the library with the help of some of our folks on the ground like Landis, can begin to connect this platform to what's actually happening in the community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over, and actually, maybe before I do, I'll just stop sharing for a second. Any questions about Bendable before we pivot into kind of how the digital is meeting what's happening on the ground? Thoughts, questions?
Rick, I will say one of the questions, and maybe this is something that's more appropriate to address a little further into the talk, is some folks were wondering what CellEd was like to work with.
Yeah.
So if that's something you're going to touch on later, that's fine, but just
No,
wanted to put
I
that out
can.
there.
Happy to tell you, CELED is a great partner of ours. First of all, for those of you not familiar with CELED, right, it's micro lessons, can be 3 or 4 minute long, can be delivered on a computer. Oh, great. So Andrea, they'll speak for themselves, but can be delivered on a computer, but also just over text message, and not even a smartphone. Anyway, they're fantastic. They've been peer reviewed academically, in use in a bunch of libraries, also by a bunch of industry partners. And we found them a tremendous resource and a great partner to work with on the back end. So yeah. And I see a hand up, Mark.
Yeah, I had a question on how well does does Bendable work for situations where there are multiple libraries who may not all have the same resource? Is that something that would need to be an individual library Bendable, or could it be something larger than that, like a consortia? Or
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So part of this would get into some contract things with Baker and Taylor, but I know that they are certainly talking to various library consortia. My sense was that in lots of cases, those consortia are consortia because they at least have access to the same content. They're group buying content and course seats. So hopefully, there would be some common ground in terms of what the catalog looked like. But if there were a couple variations within that for whatever reason, I'm sure we could work with that. One of the things that's important to note is, every library or library group gets its own Bendable instance. So it's Bendable Maine or Bendable South Bend or Bendable Oakland or whatever it is. But it's really becomes we're not living on your site. We can do, to sign up for a Bendable account, if you want to make it one-time library card authentication, we can do that. Some libraries just say, no, we're fine. People just put in a local zip code. They can have access through Bendable to, that's fine too. It's up to the library. But yeah, we can generally work out the plumbing and wiring. Any other thoughts or questions? Great. All right, Landis, I'm going to pivot over to you. And I think where this gets really interesting is the work you and Lisa and your colleagues have been doing on the ground, again, to take what could be, I think, a very useful and cool learning discovery layer and turning into something that's much more.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Rick. Yeah, so I'm, as I was talking about, one of 3 fellows scattered around the state. And while we each have our kind of regions, we also have our areas of focus, and mine has turned out to be in the workforce development realm. So creating close partnerships with organizations and government agencies that are already doing awesome work in the workforce development space, and finding ways that Bendable can help serve them and their patrons in connecting folks with jobs, be they people re-entering the workforce or entering the workforce for the first time. And so of those partners, a few have kind of ended up being those that I work most closely with. The first being the Department of Labor and their career centers. The second being a Department of Labor funded project called the Peer Workforce Navigators. And they kind of end up filling a gap that the career centers have, working with folks who might find career centers not as approachable for linguistic reasons or past experiences, what have you. And then the last group has been a collection of high school career counselors. And they sit in the room right next door to the guidance counselors, and they just focus specifically on career work, right? So finding ways to again connect them with resources that Bendable Maine and the Maine State Library are prepaying for, so that they can have access to these kind of free classes, and help shape parts of the platform to their liking. So I'm going to show you a couple of ways that we do that and talk a little bit about, some stuff that's still in the works and should be on the site soon. And Rick's given you guys a good overview, so I won't have to do much of my typical review of what Bendable is and everything. So we were just looking at Bendable South Bend. This is Bendable Maine. This is Maine's instance or portal into Bendable. So yeah, we've in the past month, we've hosted 4 different career center training sessions with the 4 different career center regions around the state. I think we had total attendance across those 4 was around 80 or 90 career center counselors and staffers. And the goal with those trainings was to get them comfortable with using Bendable as a tool in their work when they're working with patrons who need to connect with learning as the solution to part of their process in getting into the workforce. And then also to begin planting seeds for ways that libraries, as Lisa was pointing out, can work more closely with the career centers to hand off patrons who come into the library looking for workforce help and end up actually really needing assistance from a career center or one of those peer workforce navigators. And in those trainings, or leading up to those trainings, one of the things that we created 2 different spaces on the platform that kind of house career center related resources or career center resources themselves. The first of which is, as Rick talked about, we have community collections. So these are put together by community experts, as Rick said. And we tapped Dodie Emerson to put together a community collection on exploring jobs in Maine. So Dodie herself is a employment and training specialist at the Machias Career Center. And she basically gathered I like to think of these as like glorified annotated bibliographies. So it's glorified in that you have a beautiful portrait of the person who's put together the bibliography, and then a bit about who they are and what they've done. So Dodie's been a career center or been involved in the employment and training field for more than 20 years. And she's gathered, in addition to the Career Center itself, resources that she as a Career Center counselor uses on a daily basis when working with patrons. So this collection came about in talking with librarians about what are some of the common questions that you get that aren't necessarily fully in your wheelhouse, and how can we as Bendable tap experts in the community to help fill those gaps. So these resources are ones that if you were hopping on Google and looking for, workforce resources in the state of Maine, this might be the 2000th hit. Who knows, the saying about Google being able to bring you 1,000 answers and the librarian bringing you the right one, right? So this is us trying to help librarians bring the right answer to their patrons, and by way of Dodie and other experts. So this collection is one that we know, because what we've heard from our librarians, is one that will be useful in their work. Another collection we have in the pipeline right now is on navigating unemployment insurance benefits in the state of Maine. And that's being put together kind of ghost written by a whole collection of people, a couple of the peer workforce navigators, some folks from the unemployment insurance office, a couple of community nonprofit partners. And that collection will kick off with an unemployment insurance quiz. Am I eligible to apply for uninsurance? If so, here are the next handful of steps you can take to begin that process. One that, as somebody who has in the past been on unemployment insurance, is really frustrating to work through. So, you know, you can imagine, and I'm sure some of you have experienced this, a patron coming into your library and asking, hey, can you help me apply for unemployment insurance? And them saying, oh, this is perfect. Let's go walk through this community collection together, rather than the librarian having to conjure up their own pathway through that process. And then ideally down the line, being able to hand that person off to the office itself where that work is taking place. So these collections, personally, as one of the 3 people who's helped facilitate all the collections, all 20 plus on the site, these are the most fun and most engaging part of the work in any given week or any given moment. Being able to learn from Mainers of all walks of life and provide them with a space to share their expertise with folks around the state. So the other spot that we're beginning to play around with, if you haven't noticed already, Bendable loves alliteration. So here we have browsing our Bendable boards. These are basically virtual bulletin boards wherein a community partner, be it the Career Center itself or Main Street Skowhegan, can sit down with our team, sit down with one of us fellows, and talk about what kind of collection of resources that you can find on the site would they like to put together to basically create their own little portal into Bendable. This is great for folks who are less digitally confident. You can hand them a link just to this board. So for example, if you're re-entering the workforce, you link just to this board, and here we have one community collection looking at supporting Mainers in recovery and re-entry. Wendy Allen has a whole wealth of knowledge to share on the subject. And then a handful of resources that we've kind of picked based on feedback we've gotten from the Department of Labor. Some from the Career Centers, others from Learning Express. It looks like this is just Career Centers and Learning Express in this one. But here, this makes Bendable a lot more manageable for somebody coming with a specific purpose, or a Career Center counselor or a librarian looking to guide somebody to, a specific set of resources. So we have, as you saw, these are mock-ups. We're still waiting on the DOL to fully sign off on these. Sometimes that kind of stuff can move a little slowly. But we also just put together this Main Street Skowhegan toolkit on helping folks start their own small businesses. And here we have resources from SCORE, from the Maine Adult Education Association. They're a fantastic partner of ours. Even some resources from the University of Southern Maine and study.com. This has been the bulk of my work since we've launched the platform, is really creating these collaborative spaces for librarians and community partners to gather pre-existing resources and make it easier for their patrons to both discover them and then also access them, as the Maine State Library is covering the cost for about 90% of all resources found through the site. So it's been I moved to Maine a year and a half ago and found this job after moving here. This has been an awesome way to get to know the state and really kind of help contribute to the workforce efforts going on all around, and really have Bendable be a consolidator of parallel efforts is the way that I often think about this work. So I'm going to stop talking for a second and have Lisa chime in if you have anything you want to add, and also take any questions after that.
Rick, I think you're actually better positioned to answer the question that just came up in the chat than I am. How are the fellows currently being funded?
Yeah, through the Maine State Library. And so my, Bendable Labs now was the Drucker Institute hired and trained and manages the fellows and employs them. And we receive funding for that through a contract from the Maine State Library. The Department of Labor, from my understanding, also put in some funding because of the value the fellows bring.
Yeah, I can say too that the reason I sound a little more perplexed on this than usual is because we had a change in our top 2 leadership very recently at the State Library. Some of you know that Jamie Ritter and Janet McKenney, both Janet retired and Jamie is in Tennessee now at the same time. So we've had a lot of change at the top. So kind of trying to follow along with everything that's going on. But some of the money I think that was going into our databases before has been diverted over to this project too, because libraries love databases, patrons hate them, I think. The concept is a good one. It's vetted information. It's us getting them over a paywall. So you're not being riddled by ads, or different things like that too, but they're not the most user-friendly experience, which is what I do like about Bendable. It's kind of, the way I think of it, is laid out very similarly to YouTube, but without Shane Dawson or drama or crap information. It's a user platform that I think people are more used to using, searching a database and going in and your limiters and your Boolean search, and these are embargoed, and do you want a peer reviewed? And I don't know if a patron, it's not that they're stupid, it's just they got a whole other life they're living over here. They're not living our life and with our jargon and what's in front of us and what I don't even know what you're talking about. And especially when somebody is going through a job search or going through unemployment. Landis is spot on. My spouse is currently going through that process right now, and I love my labor partners. But oh my God, government websites are the worst, and you're already in a place of frustration and stress. Your time horizon for, am I going to be able to pay my rent? Am I going to be able to buy groceries, get gas? And now I have to look for a job on top of all of this and figure out all this UI stuff. And this, and that's the state of mind that a lot of times people are coming into our public libraries in, is just full on panic. And it's like, they said you'd help me. We've all heard this. They told me you would, and of course you want to do that. So this platform, I think, is friendly just as much for the librarians that are trying to help as it is for the patrons, so even if a patron is a little too to even be able to sit down in front of a computer, at least the librarian can sit down and be like, okay, I don't have to learn the whole, UI platform. I can just do this. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I've been dealing with sam.gov too for the last month, and let me tell you, I've about had it.
And I think, Lisa, what you're saying and what Nan is pointing to is really important. So one of the things when we designed Bendable, and IDEO, the design firm you may be familiar with, actually did our user experience design, and we became super sensitive to, library pages aren't stupid at all, but some may be challenged with different levels of both literacy and digital literacy. And the platform was built very much with that in mind. So again, we try and take out as much friction as we can. Landis, maybe you can go back real quick and call up just the Discover page, and you will see, so go down, explore these interest areas. Well, those were designed really for somebody who would not know how to do a proper search in a search bar, right? So now you can just say, I want to better understand technology or whatever, and it's like you've done the search. It also is a teaching moment. It's meant to teach librarians that may not know how to search, what to search for. And you'll see each one gets a tag using technology or job readiness or whatever. And those tags also become a teaching moment. Oh, I can kind of figure out now what to type in a search bar, right? And so again, we have really tried to be sensitive to, to folks in the community who may not be as familiar with how to do some of these things. The one other thing I wanted to mention is we are in full openness. We are at a moment where the fellows and the fellows program, we're now talking to the Maine State Library about sort of what parts of Bendable, continue on. There is a new administration from the librarian, the state librarian, Jamie Ritter, who hired us. There's a new librarian. She's wonderful, but she's a new librarian and is going to make her own priorities and budget priorities, and I think is looking at the budget, the whole budget anew. So I have every confidence Bendable Maine will continue on. I think we are going to still figure out the different roles and what is being maybe in the future brought more in-house under the banner of Maine State Library, and some of this community connection work and integration work with different stakeholder partners may be actually taken up by the state library and a little less by our company. But that's all, we're in conversations about that now. We have again tried to set up a system so that you can hire us to do all kinds of wraparound services. It does cost money, and that was a big investment by the Maine State Library on the front end of this to bring on the fellows. But you can also, use Bendable in various ways and lean into various degrees as a library. We're also looking for more and more ways to be sensitive to library staffing, capacity issues. And so, for example, we know the creation of community collections, I showed you some, Landis showed you some, are hugely popular in the libraries that have them. They're the most clicked on resources in South Bend and Maine. I put in the chat, right? People love learning from their neighbors, if you will, and others in their own, area, and seeing their faces and hearing their stories and learning from them. And so, we also know that that's a lot to put together for a library staff, even with our editorial help. And so we were actually piloting a program now in Oakland with the Oakland Public Library to pair a library with a local high school journalism program, where we can get the student journalists to go interview the local experts and build the community collections out. And then we'll still do the final edit and polish and everything, but it's a really cool, I think, way for a library to get a new, either work with a high school you're already working with, if you have a community partner high school, or help you cultivate a new relationship, give a great educational experience to a young journalism student, give them credit, right, on the site for having put the collection together. And it's sort of, we think, a great win for the library, great win for the high school students to get some experience. So we're really excited about that and putting that together. Yeah, trying to take care of your bandwidth needs, but still allow Bendable to do the great things it can do by connecting to community. So, so that's what we're working on.
Another fun example of pulling in students that's I'm currently working on is doing a similar thing with building a community, or having students build a community collection, but rather having them build their own Bendable board,
right,
as like a group. So I'm working with a Mid-Coast youth center where there's already a collection of 11 students going through a set of modules, thinking about their kind of alternate tracks through the education system. And so then giving them the kind of the keys to the castle to say, hey, go build your own little syllabus over here with things that really spark your interest, and possibly designing a little bit of a flipped classroom model where you're doing that work at home and then you come back to the group on a weekly basis and you have a book club for learning. So that kind of the flexibility, the ability to hand the keys to the learners themselves to create their own kind of spaces, to their own sandboxes to learn and play in, is a really fun and empowering one.
That's what really does make it a platform and not just a pipe, because it does give people the chance to contribute good information as well. But again, unlike YouTube, it's not just I'm a Bendable creator now, just start throwing stuff up there. Everything on there is vetted.
Right. Yeah, we
So-
don't crowdsource. As much as sometimes we thought about it, we do want quality control and editorial control. We also just, again, bandwidth has come up a little bit on the chat. You even on the spotlights, right? So those curated homepage sections for Women's History Month, or handling personal finances, or what literature, whatever you want to focus on as a library. You can curate those things as a library staff, or sign a Bendable librarian to do that every month or every quarter or as much as you want. Or we have set it and forget it options. So we can preset them for you, and they'll refresh every month on your homepage, and you don't have to worry about it. And we can tailor that to your catalog. So again, you can lean in as much as you want, or you can just have a discovery layer. We love when you lean in, because we think that's really getting the most out of Bendable, but it can be either.
One last thing to show before, Rick, I toss it back to you for the job readiness room. Another thing that our librarians can curate are what we call classics and classes, again with the alliteration. These are where a book here discoverable or accessible through Maine's digital library system, book sharing system called Maine Cat, is paired with a class that's related to that book, which is a fun. All our librarians love this around the state, and these kind of cycle through on a monthly basis. And we're working to make a bookshelf or a book and class shelf that'll live kind of like a bendable board, where all of these from the past will end up going. Yeah, this is a great way to, again, bridge the physical and the digital, with some clever learning connections.
Rick and Landis, I'm sorry to interrupt. I was wondering if, before you go on with that California piece that I'm just in love with, by the way, do you have a quick minute to show everybody my favorite section, which is the crisis help?
Oh,
section?
yeah. I'm happy to share that.
Yep.
Yeah, so one of the ways that we meet
Hey,
our
Landis,
learners.
before you do that, let me just say one other quick thing about classics and classes. We're talking to our partners at Baker and Taylor about, right here, we're connecting, a book out of your, that you can find at the library to a related class. We're talking about flipping that, since Baker and Taylor is the biggest distributor of physical books to libraries in the country. I'm guessing many, if not most of you, get at least some of your physical books from B&T. That for Bendable libraries, when a book ships out, if there's a related Bendable class, or maybe we'll pick 10 a month or something, they will have a postcard in it with a QR code that takes you to the related Bendable class. So it could be a really cool way to flip it and actually have now the physical book take you to the digital. So anyway, that's a fun thing we're playing with too.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's the first I'm hearing of that, but I love the idea. Yeah, so one of the ways that we meet our patrons where they're at is through a partnership with an organization called findhelp.org.
Which you should know about anyway if you're not familiar.
Yeah, so this is a free platform to anybody on the internet. We just have a Bendable branded entryway into the site, and it's basically 211, but far more user friendly and also accessible, because the whole site you're able to translate the whole site into, I don't know how many languages, but it looks like a lot. So for example, I'm in Portland, so 04102. And when I hit search, I'm brought to a page that is prompting me to look for programs in any one of these categories and any subcategory that they have. So the idea with this connection is to, again, meet patrons where they're at. If they're worrying about putting food on the table or finding childcare for their kids so that they can go to work and provide for their family, they're not thinking about learning, right? They're thinking about those things. So here's a really streamlined tool to help folks connect with those types of resources. So like a food pantry, for example. Here's a map of the Portland area. This is the peninsula. I'm somewhere in here. And then these are 22 different organizations that work with food pantries in some way or host their own food pantry. If I click more info, I get everything from, the cost, languages, hours of operation, directions. Yeah, so this is a really awesome tool. And again, this is a free one. If you go to findhelp.org, you won't have the Bendable name in the top corner, but you will have the exact same functionality.
And it's quite low cost. If your library wanted to have its own branded Find Help site, that's pretty easy to do too. So, yeah, great tool. So I put in the last couple of things in the chat. You'll see, you just go to bendable.com. You can see the libraries we're currently working with, including the Maine State Library. Just click on the library you want, and you can sign up. You'll at some point, if you try and click on certain learning resources, it'll ask you to have a Bendable account. Since you're now my friends, I'm giving you the secret code of 99999, all nines as your zip code, and that'll give you 30-day temporary access to poke around and kind of get a free look around any of the sites. So okay, and if you have any problems, you can always email me, or if you're interested in learning more, you can email me. Also in the chat, it's just rick@bendablelabs.com. So happy to help. And if you get tripped up getting in there, let me know and we'll get it straightened out.
So I know, real quick, I know some folks are going to be dropping off at 3. We do have another half hour, but I'll throw our emails in the chat for those of you who are parting early. And yeah, feel free to reach out with any questions.
So I'm going to speed through this a little bit, but I wanted to give you, since so many of you are focused on workforce development, just a little insight into another program that we're running in North San Diego County, California. Bendable Labs, my company, is doing in partnership with Lightcast. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Lightcast. It's the new name for what was called MZ Burning Glass. They're the biggest labor market analytics company in the country. They took 2 companies. MZ specialized in slicing and dicing government labor data, Bureau of Labor Statistics data, and Burning Glass specialized in real-time, what they call real-time labor market information, which is basically they scrape every job site and every online job posting in the country and can see patterns and, by geography, who's hiring, what are the, requirements being asked in terms of education, what's the pay being posted, and all those things. And so they both companies were bought and merged, and the result is Lightcast. And it's great because now they can put both data sets together and really get a good picture of what's happening in any local labor market. So it's pretty cool. So we have a partnership with them where, in partnership with the Carlsbad City Library, but we've now extended to not only the city of Carlsbad, but 4 other cities in the region. So Oceanside, Vista, San Marcos, Escondido, and Vista. No, I guess that's all of them. Carlsbad, San Marcos, Oceanside, Escondido, and Vista are the 5 cities in North San Diego County, California. And we're running a pilot where somebody comes into the library or is directed to the library site, the Bendable site, where this job readiness room feature set lives on the Bendable platform through the Carlsbad City Library. They take 15 hours of job readiness training, and I'll tell you what that is in a second. And in exchange for completing the training, they get a micro credential and a guaranteed job interview with a local employer on the other end. And that's all being put together by Lightcast and the partnerships that it has with local economic development organizations, chambers of commerce, and work boards and those kinds of things. So that's how we're trying to stitch all of this together. So, we see a real need, which I think you do. I mean, we know just the largest economic need, right? That labor force participation has been, declining. we know that there are, tens of millions of Americans who really are having a hard time getting a foothold in the labor market, even in a tight labor market like this one. But they want to work more, right? These have been dubbed hidden workers. They are folks who, again, are unemployed, maybe working part-time hours, but want full-time, maybe out of the labor force entirely, right? They're part of that labor force participation challenge, but they actually want to work, but they can't find a way in, and they may be really struggling. And frankly, we think this is lots of the folks who come into libraries looking for job help. They're the folks at the computers trying to figure this out who really need a break. We also know that employers have millions of job openings that require little or no experience, often just a high school degree, if that. But they can't tell who's really job ready. And so they have incredibly high rates of turnover for these frontline jobs. Look, part of this is due to low pay and other factors, but part of it is they have a hard time figuring out who really is ready to step into an entry level role. And for them, the turnover is super, super costly. We know that local leaders have been charged with trying to fix this problem, but don't have the best tools. And we know that libraries too, look, you're on a LibsWork call because you're leaning into workforce development, right? Others we know are being thrust into that role, whether they like it or not. And as libraries just play, right, all kinds of different roles in the community and ever, more important role in workforce development, we know librarians could also use better tools in this regard. Worth noting, by the way, this is Pew data that, and this is particularly important for communities of color, and that, Blacks and Hispanics count on libraries a lot for job help, more so than other groups. So again, we've partnered with Lightcast to put together this solution. This is what the current kind of sign up looks like for job seekers and employers in North County. And as I said, you come in either through the library or through a community partner. We're working with Goodwill and Interfaith Community Services and others who are directing, in some cases, their clients into our program. You take a 5-course sequence, as I said, of classes. The first thing that happens when you sign up, though, is you actually get a learner success coach. We're currently using a company called Graduation Alliance to provide some coaching support for that job seeker. We know that having somebody who just gives you especially at the beginning, a hug for, getting going, or a nudge because you haven't gotten going for a week or two and need to kind of move through the material if you're going to do it. Those hugs and nudges are really important. So you get a learner success coach. You opt in to being contacted by them in the way you want, either through email, text, or phone call. You take, so you get this one-on-one kind of coaching. Each pathway begins with a set of 4 courses, right? And what we do is we have different industry tracks. So they're currently featuring 3 of them in North San Diego County. One is in hospitality, not surprisingly, right? Lots of resorts and hotels and things down on the beach. So hospitality is one industry. Office administration, kind of frontline office work, is another, and manufacturing is another, all based on real job data and what the employers are telling us where the most in-demand frontline jobs are. You take, no matter which industry track you pick, you take 4 kind of job readiness classes. One's in teamwork, one's in time management, one's in communications, one's in critical thinking. That totals 4 hours of content. The skills you learn are based on, again, real Lightcast data based on real job postings in those areas. And you are assessed on that 4 hours of learning. And you have to pass the little assessments or quizzes as you go through the program to earn the micro credential. You then sort of pause before you get to your capstone course, and you select the industry that you're interested in. And what we do is, after the 4, we ask you to select this industry. The way the flow is working, you contact your coach. They can give you some real-time insight into who's hiring, maybe they have a little, again, based on real job posting data, salary information that you can look at and say, oh, I thought I wanted hospitality, but wow, there are way more openings in manufacturing. Maybe I should go with that. And you take this 10-hour capstone course, you're not assessed on it. We do want to see that you viewed all the lessons. And the idea of the capstone course is to really give you some exposure to the industry. What would it be like to work there? What are some of the skills I'm going to need if I want that next step job to kind of keep going, and so on. So it's really meant to give you an overall taste of things. So again, you sort of select your industry by talking to your coach and making that choice. And then the way we're giving you information, we're working very hard on this part. This has been the hardest part to stitch together in our pilot in North County, we're working now directly with hiring managers to make sure that their job listings, their job postings on Indeed, this is an Indeed listing, are marked JRR preferred, job readiness room preferred, so that, again, the coach can search and have real-time insight for the job seeker and say, oh, there's 7 office administration jobs marked JRR preferred in our region. And then we know that when they apply with the help of the coach for that job and their resume includes this micro-credential in office administration, that's going to be a match. And what we've learned in doing this is we've had to get the information flow to be more knitted up into the regular kind of work stream of the hiring manager. Otherwise, it doesn't work. When we started the program 6 months ago, people would complete the program. We were just sending out an email blast saying, here are the current micro-credential holders, here's their contact information. And what we found was that at company A, the vice president of HR had heard about the program from the Chamber of Commerce and signed up. But the information, that person was the email contact, it wasn't actually getting down to the hiring managers. They were hitting delete, they weren't forwarding it, or they were forwarding it and the hiring manager had no idea what it was. So we've realized we've got to really work directly with the hiring managers and knit this whole thing up end to end. And that's what we're currently doing, and it's starting to flow much better. We give those who complete the program a pathway to tell them, here are the skills you're going to need for your next step job, and here's some courses on Bendable that could help you move ahead. We don't expect anyone's going to dive back in and start learning again. Hopefully some will, but I don't really think that's going to happen. But we do want to plant the seed that you've learned some skills, you got a shot, you got a job interview. If you don't get hired, by the way, you get put back into the pool until you hopefully do actually land a position. And we want to plant this seed that with continued learning and developing new skills, you can move into the next job and then the next job. And so that's the mindset that we're trying to help foster. And again, we're using real job information. This isn't a theory. Here's what next step jobs look like. We know people who started as a assembler, on a factory floor, right? A basic production worker, very entry level, can become a production technician if you learn these things. And so we're trying to map those pathways for folks. Real quick, and then happy to take any questions. This is the region we're in. We launched in August, so again, about 6 months old, recently expanded from Carlsbad to the other cities. Great community involvement. We never come into a community and say, we're the solution, or we're here to, this is with Bendable too. We're trying to amplify the good work that others are doing. We're trying to be complementary. And so we're working with Goodwill and with Interfaith Community Services and with the local work board in coordination. And this is just a different avenue to say, you've got job seekers coming into libraries, and this can be a really valuable way to reach them and to help them. As I said, we're leaning into the hiring manager part of the process right now, trying to get that straightened out. But to date, we have 24 participating employers. We have about 54 job seekers currently in the program. That's, since I put this slide deck together, that may have grown or shrunk a little bit, but something like that. We're actually up now to 12 micro-credential recipients, folks who've completed the program. We've landed 3 folks in jobs, and again, hope to accelerate that. So that's kind of where we are, and you know, and we're excited about moving forward. We've been talking to other regions about bringing this model to them. This typically is funded it's not funded through the library. It's an expensive program for this end-to-end. It's very labor intensive with coaching and folks on the ground to work with the local employers and so on. But we need a library partner. And so, again, if anybody on this this is at all of interest, feel free to contact me. And what I would ask is, hey, do you work with your local work board? Do you work with your chamber? And if not, that answer is that's fine too. We can make, but you're a willing and interested library in this solution, then we can work on the other end of it. And anyway, we have folks all over the country, from South Carolina to Detroit to Maine to, you know, to North Carolina. We're talking to a number of communities about this program. So any questions on that one? And again, really just another kind of manifestation of the way Bendable can be utilized to leverage that course content. The courses we're currently using, by the way, in the job readiness room in North County, those 4 soft skills classes, if you will, we're using 3 CELED courses and 1 study.com course on communications. And then the capstone courses for the 3 industries are a mix of study.com and another training provider called Valor 180 Skills for the manufacturing track. And we're looking to do that. I will tell you that my company, Bendable Labs, we've been very scrupulous about being content curators and not content creators, but we actually see a real need to build out some content that we create ourselves, particularly for entry-level job seekers in libraries and for librarians to be able to lean into and leverage. We think it's a really, we need to create some better content and some less expensive content, because when you start chewing up course seats, it gets expensive through CELED and study.com, and we think we can price it better for libraries. So we're also starting to work on that. Great. Any questions, thoughts?
Rick or Landis, could you
right.
touch briefly on how you pull usage data from Bendable? As you know, libraries all have to submit information for annual reports, and you know, database usage is one of those things. And maybe the confidentiality piece as well.
Yeah, that's great question. So on the usage side, we you know, any Bendable library gets a usage report of basically what courses are people, how many visitors to Bendable each month, and what are they clicking on. In some cases, we can get then in turn aggregated reports from certain content providers who then know that these learners have come from Bendable, and here's like how they've done on the other end. You know, they've made this much progress in courses, but that's not true for all the providers. Some don't track learner progress on the other side. And we're careful. We don't collect any personal information as Bendable beyond somebody's name and email. We ask if they can opt in and give us their cell phone number. We will, you know, ping them with friendly little, you know, hey, there's, you know, check out this on Bendable this month kind of things. If they want to opt in, we try not to drive people crazy, but keep them engaged. But that's all opt-in. So we're very careful. That's the only personal information we collect. And in some cases, but we make it clear on that handoff page, if they want to register to be a student at Penn Foster or, you know, something, they may have to enroll and provide additional information to them. They're not going to be sold anything. The seats are paid for by the library, but they may have to, you know, have further information that they provide. But we don't see that. That doesn't come to us.
Rick, before we go, do you want to do a quick plug for the research you guys are getting up to?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Man, I should take you with me everywhere. So yeah, so part of the co-founder of Bendable Labs, her name's Sarah Zahner. Sarah and I, in addition to, founding this company, we have, we're both senior fellows at the Burning Glass Institute. If you're familiar with that, it's actually spun out of Burning Glass, the company, but it's a nonprofit research institution, headed by some economists and other social scientists. And we work with a guy there named Stuart Andreessen, who Stu was head of workforce development for the Federal Reserve before he went over to Burning Glass. So check out, first of all, the Burning Glass Institute. They have probably some resources that you might be interested in, this group would be interested in. We have some research grants that that Sarah and I have gotten to look at the role of libraries in workforce development. And some of this is around Bendable, of course, but it's broader. And I'd love to be able, if it's okay, to reach back out to you all, and we might have some survey stuff that we'd love for you to participate in, where you can describe to us, your roles in workforce development, and the kinds of tools that you need. So that would be really helpful. We're doing this research under one grant for Walmart.org, Walmart's corporate foundation, which has a real interest in kind of the intersection of learning and work, and has done a lot of funding in this space, including was one of, along with Google, the original funders of Bendable, philanthropic funders of Bendable, and for WorkRise, which is an Urban Institute project. So they're all gotten interested in libraries and workforce, and because of we're really the ones on the ground with a digital product around this. So we're kind of the eyeballs into this world for them. And you're our eyeballs into this world most directly. So we need all of you to help us understand what's going on.
Yeah, definitely happy to send out anything that you want us to distribute on the list and through our channels. And it also sounds like we'll have to invite you back to review your research and when you have your findings, so that we can hear more.
Would love to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, that kind of reminded me a little bit of the Mount Auburn Associates research and COSLA, I think, where they were kind of looking into the, partnerships between libraries and workforce agencies at the time. And Rick, I think I sent that information to Landis, along with the Heldrich Institute thing that some of us worked on a few years ago. Because it really was going above and that was above and beyond job seeking activities in libraries to actual workforce development stuff in libraries. So there's definitely a lot more stuff happening around, people recognizing that is a partnership, and it's something that's appealing, to a lot of state governments too, where they see different agencies working together.
Mm-hmm.
When we're used to a lot of siloing, and that helps nothing.
Hi, this is Nan Carmack here in Virginia. Our governor has decided that our workforce system is so broken that he's putting together a commission to try to synthesize it all. And I am elbowing my way to that table.
Good for you.
And so we already have partners with the Small Business Development Center, our Main Street communities, chambers of commerce, and because we all recognize the value of libraries. So now I've just got to work on the governor and this new commission. But this gives me a great way to say, look at what we could be doing together, and reduce, presumably reduce some costs, because everybody's trying to do it themselves. And this would be, economy of scale project. Thank you for all of this.
And that greater collective buying power too, Nan, that agencies and especially libraries can wield.
It's great.
Thank you for having us in today. Rick, go ahead. You have something else you wanted to say?
No, I just wanted to say thanks as well. And yeah, great to meet everybody. Again, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And yeah, we'll probably be reaching back out to you again, just with some of our on the research side of things. It's really valuable for us to know about this group. So thank you.
I did see where I saw an email pop up that the Public Library Association's taking proposals for presentations at their conference too. So something to kind of keep in mind with that. But I really love the job readiness aspect that you're unrolling in California, and like to see more of that. You know, as a couple of us commented in the chat, what a friggin' mess it is to try to apply for a job, you know, like.
It's hard. Yep.
I could go on about that at length. But just, you know, to be able to get some, and my cat has joined us. Just to be able to get in through the door, you know, and that is the thing that a lot of employers say that they're very concerned about is, will people show up on time for work? Will people show up for work, period? You know, all these different things, and getting employers to any table. Nan, I'm sure you're seeing this too in Virginia. They're the hardest group to get. You know, every agency is coming together trying to figure out how to connect people looking for jobs with people needing employees, but employers are really hard to wrangle.
They're very good at saying that there's a problem.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. No, that's right.
We know this.
It's one of the things that we've found a real benefit from working with Lightcast, because just based on who they are, they have the ability to bring economic development organizations and chambers and you know, and employers, large employers to the table. So I mean, we're talking in South Carolina, for example, to the Manufacturers Association, which is great, about the job readiness room. And the value proposition, Lisa, to your point, is, you know, we really do think if an individual who is, you know, poor or working poor, really struggling, the kind of folks who are coming into a library for job health, you know, it may not sound like a lot to some people, but if they stick with 15 hours of this program, that says a lot about them. It says that they have some real stick-to-itiveness, some real determination. They have a willingness to learn. And our bet is that obviously we're trying to give them a break and give them this signal to an employer that they have value with the micro credential. Folks who normally would be washed out by algorithm or would never get a second look because they've got some gaps in their resume or whatever. But for the employer, we're trying to say, we think we're going to give you a better, stickier, right? They are going to show up for the interview, and they're actually going to come back after lunch on day 2 and stay with it. We're going to give you a better group of entry-level employees, and we're going to reduce your turnover. And so we really do see this as a way for people to signal that they're part of that. And we see this in the numbers. We've had about right now 100 people sign up for the job readiness room. And again, there's no blame here at all. Again, it is really hard, struggling, right? But so we know that, and I'm doing the exact counts, but I bet you know, 70 of them like sign up and then disappear with the wind, right? It's the first screen is just, do they stick with it even to get going in the courses? And then some get a little of the way and then fall off. And again, we've now had 12 completes, and we've got, you know, another, you know, whatever, you know, bunch in, and we're hoping with the coaching to get them through. But I can really see, man, if I were an employer, I really would bet on those people who made it all the way through. They're ready for that job. So it's a powerful signal, we think.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for having us. And yeah, I hope if you're on the East Coast, you're staying safe in the snow.
The wind and snow has started here in Bangor.
There you go.
It looks like it stopped here.
Oh yeah.
We have it now. Thank you.
Yeah,
I want to say thank you also to this group as well, because this, as I said at the beginning, is where I first even heard about Bendable when it was the St. Joseph County rollout. And it's been working out really well for us. So I'm excited to see it taking off in other places around too, and that there's the ability to sort of tweak ever so slightly to fit, you know, the problems that need to be addressed in each area. Maine's specific problem is a lot of geography, but not a lot of population. And that affects what we get for federal funding a lot of times too, unfortunately. But this has helped to really bring together our different state agencies in a way that no other initiative that we have done in the past has. And Landis has certainly been a big part of reaching across to other workforce development agencies that I just don't always have the time to get to. So I'm deeply appreciative of that. Elizabeth, yes, it is.
Right, I think we're coming to that time. So thank you, Landis and Rick and Lisa, for this great presentation. Thank you, Landis, for putting your email addresses in the chat again. So please reach out if you have any other questions. This recording will be posted probably on Thursday, and I will send it around to everybody. And also information about Remember Save June 24th for if you're going to the ALA conference for our meetup. Our next LibsWork meeting will be April 11th, and our topic will be cell ed. So you would think that we planned that perfectly, but this is an example of how things kind of fall into place. So we're looking forward to seeing you then, and have a great day. Stay safe in the snow. There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks so much. Bye.
All right.